Afreilach Chanukah. This is Gemara in Baba Kama Daf Lamid Ches, and we're holding on Lamid Zayin Amid Beis. We are 3 lines from the bottom, and we just finished beginning the discussion of Rav Shimon ben Menasya. Rav Shimon ben Menasya was a brisa that we quoted, which is very similar to the din of the Mishnah, just argues. Shimon ben Menasya holds that there's a difference between hektish, goring us, and us goring hektish. Shar shel hektish, that gored a shar shel hedit, the regular person is potter. But the reverse, if a regular person gores hektish, then they pay nezik shalim. So the Gemara now begins by asking perhaps the obvious kasha on Rav Shimon ben Menasya that you have to take a side. Amri Mai Kosavar. So what does Rav Shimon hold? That's the question. Meaning, you got to choose. Ireu Dafka, if you shar shel potter. Vireu lav Dafka, then if you hektish nami ki noch dehedi lechayiv. Meaning, does he darshin re'eu or not? If he does, he does. If he doesn't, he doesn't. And I apologize again for the video issue. Says the Gemara. Maybe you're going to say, the reason one hedyet gores hektish he's chayiv, meaning really he darshans re'eyu. If he darshans re'eyu, therefore there should be a p'tur across the board teaching us that in all scenarios when hektish is involved, there is a p'tur. The reason why in our scenario he is chayiv is mishum dekamaisi le mikal v'chaymer. The reason is because he learns from a kal v'chaymer. A kal v'chaymer to be mechayiv hektish again, even in a scenario that they should be potter. Says the Gemara, the hedyet. What's the kal v'chaymer? Uma hedyet shenagah shel hedyet chayiv ki nagach hektish loy kol shekin. If a hedyet gores a hedyet, if 2 regular people are involved, and that creates a chiyuv, ki nogach. So if you're going to tell me if I gore a hektish, I won't be mechayiv de mechayiv? Of course you should be. But says the Gemara, that can't be. Why not? There's a fundamental problem. The problem is that you can never be more chayiv from that which you are, from that which you are learning from. Says the Gemara, why? If we're learning from a kal v'chaymer, from a hedyet, then what's the problem? It can't be more chamur than the case of 2 regular people damaging each other. Which is what? Just like over there, a tam pays chatzi nezek, meaning there are rules of chatzi nezek. So too, in this case of a hektish, there should be rules of chatzi nezek. And the problem is, Rav Shimon ben Menasya said, there aren't. You always pay a nezek shalim. So says the Gemara, Elam Reish Lakish, Ha'kol you bechlal nezek shalim. Really? Says Reish Lakish, anytime there is damages, even of a hedyet, you should have to pay nezek shalim. However, kishaparat lecha because of re'ehu, this special exclusion of hektish is only gabe tam, only with regard to tam re'ehu who did tam mishal chatzi nezek. Whereas mechlal the hektish bein tam u bein muad mishalim nezek shalim, meaning there's one exclusion, and that exclusion is only going to help for re'eyu of a tam, and that's when it's going to be chatzi nezek. But all damages of hektish will automatically be nezek shalim. And we turn over to Lameches Amar Aleph, and says the Gemara, De'im kain, I'll prove to you that which we're saying is accurate. De'im kain, because if not, nechtav kra lahai re'eyu gabi muad. What's the reason that the pasuk is found specifically by tam? The fact that this pasuk is only by a tam shows us that the exclusion of the Gemara only applies to a tam and not to a muad, and therefore that is conclusive, going to be the source of Rav Shimon ben Menasya. And continues the Gemara on the second line of Lameches Amid Aleph. Shar shel Yisrael shein nagach Shar shel Kenaini. a shar of a regular year that gores an ox of a Kenaini, what's the halacha? Lacha, he is potter. Says the Gemara, Amri mimanavshach. Again, we're trying to figure out a sharsha Yisrael, shenogach sharshal Kenaini is potter. Ask the Gemara a similar kasha mimanavshach. Irehu davka the Kenani ki nagdi so namli potter. Virehu lav davka the so ki nagdi Kenani nami the chayiv. The chayiv, the same exact question we asked of Shimon ben Asya, asks the Gemara now on the case of Kenani, because the Mishnah said that if a Jew is ox gores a Kenani's ox, the Jew is potter. But yet in the reverse, if the Kenani gores the Jew, then he's chayiv. Says the Gemara, choose your poison, whichever way you do it. Do we darshan reyu? Do we not darshan reyu? What is the story? So answers the Gemara, Amar Rav Avuho, explains the Ravu, Amar Kra, says the Pasik, Amaid vayimodid eretz ra vayiter goyim. Says Ravuah, we could darshan the Pasik. What does the Pasik teach us? Amad, referring to Hashem, that Hashem stood up. Vayimoidid eretz, and he judged the land raw. He saw, and what did he do? Viter goyim, or Vayater, actually, and he released the Goyim. What does it mean he saw and he released the Goyim? Explains the Gemara. Ra Sheva Mitzvahs. He saw the 7 mitzvahs. Shekiblu Aleim b'nei Noach. The 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. Kiven Shaloi Kimu. Amad v'hiter memoyimnan li Yisrael. He saw that the Goyim were not following the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, and therefore he permitted their money to Klal Yisrael, and that is the reason why that if their ox gores us, they have to pay, but we do not have to pay if we damage them. Makar number 1 of Rav Avuah. Makar number 2 says Rav Yochanan Amar Rav Yochanan, 3 lines from the wide lines. It teaches Rav Yochanan a different source. Amar Mehach says the pasuk Oifia mehar paran, and from here we darshan me paran Oifia mimoinan li Yisrael. From Paran, he revealed the money to Klal Yisrael, that he gave a special kanas to the Kananim, that all the Kananim are not considered Re'eyu, but there's a special kanas, that if the Kanani gores the Yid, he's going to be Chayiv. Says the Gemara will bring a right to this point. Tananami Hachi says the Braisa, Sharsha Yisrael Sharsha Kanani Pater. On the first Y line, however, Sharsha Kanani Sharsha Yisrael Beintam Beimud Mishalim Nezek Shalim. What's the raya? Says the pasuk Shenemar Amar Vayimoidid Eretz Ra Viter Goyim Ve'oimer Hoifia Mihar Paran. Both sources that we just quoted, sourced by the Braisa. Continues the Gemara, Mai Ve'oimer. What is this second pasuk? Once we have the first pasuk that says that Hashem stood up and permitted their money, why do we need a second pasuk? Says the Gemara, my vaimer v'chitema. Maybe you're going to suggest, hi of Amar ve'moidid eretz mi ba'ilelech Rav Masna. Uchter Rav Yosef. Maybe you need this din for Rav Masna and Rav Yosef, which we'll explain in a moment. Tashma v'yam yar parna me parna v'yam Yisrael. So now the Gemara says, what is that din of Rav Masna? My Rav Masna, Rav Masna, Amid ve'moidid eretz Rav v'chulu. What do we darsha from this pasuk? Says Rav Masna, Ma Ra Shiva mitzvah shenistava aleim. He saw the 7 mitzvahs that he commanded them b'nei Noach, v'loi kaimum, and therefore Amad v'higlo esami elad masam. Hashem stood up and exiled them from their land. So according to Rav Masna, this pasuk is needed for elsewhere, and therefore we need another pasuk of Aviyah Mi'ar Paran. Says the Gemara, how do we know that word Vayater shows Agluyi, that they went to Galus? Ksev hacha viter goy. Ksev hasam linater bohen al aret umetargim, and we darshan the pasuk. We explain, the targum the kafsa behind al ara, to jump upon the land. So we see that linater means jumping from one area to the next. So too vayater shows jumping. What does jumping mean when you're jumped from one area to the next? Meaning exiled from one place to the next. That's Rav Masna. My Rav Yosef. Again, we said both Rav Masna and Rav Yosef use this pasuk to darshan something else. Rav Yosef Amar v'imoidid eretz Ra v'chulu. Ma Ra Sheva mitzvahs shekiblu aleim b'nei Noach. He saw the 7 mitzvahs that Noach was accepted upon themselves. Lo kaimun, and they didn't follow it. Amar v'yiter lahem. Amad, he stood up. V'yiter lahem. and he made them permissible. He released them from the dinim. He did not obligate them from keeping all the halacha. Says the Gemara, what does that mean? It's kuri itzker. Comes out from the fact that they did not keep the mitzvahs. It sounds like they're gaining. Imkain, if that's true, matzino chayte nischar. It can't be. We never gain for doing an aveira. So how can we suggest that a chayte over here that they're gaining from not following that which they were supposed to? So Amar Mar Breder Avana Ravina Loimar, he explains Sha'afilu Mekaimin Aisan Ein Mekablim Alehem Schar. The opposite, they still have to do it, but they're not going to get the schar for following the mitzvahs. They're still obligated by the Shiva mitzvahs without the payment for following through. Says the Gemara V'loi, is this true? Do they really not get reward? Vatanya. But we learned in a brayso, Rabbi Meir Oimer says, Rabbi Meir Minayin Shavilu Nachri V'Isik Ba'Tayra. Shehu, a startling line, says the brayso. A guy that keeps the Torah is Kikayin Gadol. How do we know that? It doesn't refer to Klal Yisrael. Ella Adam. And before Shemir explained, Isaac Batera doesn't mean Isaac Batera. It means he keeps the Shivas Mitzvahs B'nei Noach. So how do we know that? So says the Gemara, we see that a guy that keeps the Shiva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, Lamaisa, does get reward. Answers the Gemara, Amri ein mekablam aleim sachar ki misuveh. He said they do get reward, but they don't get the reward for being commanding and do it. Ella kimi she'enai mitzuveh. He said they get rewarded like one who's not commanded and follows through anyways. And says the Gemara famously, Damar Rav Chanina. We know usually the Gemara brings down the story with Rav Yosef, who was blind. Gadol mitzuveh v'iseh. Yoser mimi she'ena mitzuvah v'iseh. Of course, is more schar. If you get commanded and you follow it, whether it's because then there's Yitzhahara or other reasons, so the Goyim do not get that level of schar. We continue about 15 lines to the bottom. The two dots, Tanu Rabbanan. First one in line is Ukvar. Ukvar Shalchos Amalchos Roimi. The Roman government sent Shnei Sardioitais Eitzel Chachmei Yisrael. They sent two officers to Klal Yisrael saying, Limdunu Teiraschem. Teach us your Torah. Karu v'shanu v'shalshu. Says the Gemara, they read it once, they chazard again, they read it a third time. Pshas petiras and amar lehem, when they were leaving, these officers said to the Chachamim, Tiktaknu v'chol teiraschem v'emesu. We went through your whole Torah and it's true. Chutz from one thing, midavar zeh. Sha'atem aimrim, this halacha that we're in the middle of discussing, shar shal yisrael shal shal chanani, is potter. So the Chachmei of the Umas Ha'olam asked me, how could this didn't be true? Whichever way you look at it doesn't make sense. But the Chachamim told them, Lamaisa, even though we can't make sense of this din, we're not going to tell it to the Malchus. We're not going to jeopardize your, meaning referring to the Yidden, your safety. But, of course, the Mefarshim are bringing down that Lamaisa, they couldn't hold back. And there were different nisim that happened to make that they forgot that which they saw, so that they didn't have this temptation to tell over what they saw to the Roman authorities. Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, 6 lines from the bottom, continues the Gemara with another story. Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda Shchiva Le Brate. What happened was his daughter was Niftaris. Amru Le Rabbanan. So the Rabbanan said to Ula, Kom Nezel Nachme. Let's go be Menachem Avel to Shmuel Bar Yehuda. Amr Lahu. Ula said to them, what do I have to do with the nechama of you Babylonians? What do you mean? The gidufo. Says Ula, a strong line. It's giduf. It's blasphemy to Hashem, that which you Babylonians do when you play a shivakol. Tamri, you know why? Because you say, they say, what could have been done? Which implies a drastic line. Implies that at the Shiva house you're telling he's sitting Shiva Avshalom Eved Avdi. If there would have been something to you would have done it. Instead, Ula went by himself. He didn't want to go with the other Chachamim. Rather, he went to pay a Shiva call by himself. Amar Lei. So Ula says to Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, he quotes a pasuk. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe al titzeres moyav al tiskar bam milchama. And Hashem said to Moshe, pardon the airplanes. Hashem, no, it's not what Hashem said to Moshe, just pardon the airplanes. Hashem said to Moshe, do not al titzeres moyav, do not oppress moyav. Val tiskar bam milchama, do not incite them to milchama. Says Ula to Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, "V'chima Ola al Daita Shal Moshe la'asis Mochama Shleber Shos." What does this pasuk mean? Hashem's telling Moshe. Does it actually? Do we think that Moshe Rabbeinu would have a thought to go to Milchama against Moav without Hashem's permission? Elanasa Moshe Kal V'chaymer ba'atzmai. Moshe must have made a kaval in Kal V'chaymer. Amar, he said, Uma Midyanim, regarding the Midyanim Shlabo Elazar es Moav. They only came to help Moav, and yet Amra Taira, Sarares Midyanim, Vikisem Oisam. That what are we supposed to do to the Midyanim who only came to help the Moavim? We should fight them and we should hit them. So the Chav Chaimer that Moshe Rabbeinu is going to make is we turn over to Lamechesam Ebeis. Moavim Atzmam. I apologize that the page is flying. I'll come back in a moment. Moavim Atzmam. So regard to the Moavim themselves, like Kol Shekain. So Moshe Rabbeinu is going to darshan that certainly it's the right thing to go to Milchama against them. Amar le'Kadosh Baruch Hu. Ula says again. Ula, let's remind ourselves, is paying a shiva call to Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda. Ula says, what's going on over here? Says Ula, look, Yishal Saldait Chol Saldaiti. Amar le'Kadosh Baruch Hu. So Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, like Yishal Saldait Chol Saldaiti. That which you think is not what I think. I don't want Moav to be destroyed. Rather, Shtei Paradais Toivais Yeshli. Says Hashem to Moshe Rabbeinu, there are two fine pigeons that I have to draw out of Moav, which is whom? Lahoitzi Mehen, which of course is Rusa Moavia, Venami Ha'amoinis. So therefore, that's the reason why Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu not to go to battle against Ammon and Moav. So now again, Ula is sitting at the Shiva house of Shmuel Bar Yehuda. Where is the consolation that he's saying? And here it is, says Ula v'aloi dvarim kal v'chaymer. Uma b'shvil, shtei preidois toivois, chas HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'albeis umais. For two fine pigeons, for just two people, Hashem led an entire nation to live. He did not destroy them. Bitoi shaloisai tzadik, shal Rebbe, excuse me. Bitoi shall of your daughter, im kesherihi v'ruhi latzeis mimena davar taif. If she was kosher and something good would have come out of her, alachas kama ve'kama tavechayi. How much more so would she have lived? So it sounds like a harsh line, but Ula basically saying that, of course, Ula emphasizing the din of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, portraying that with that which Hashem does is just, maybe to our, simple ears, it sounds difficult to hear, but of course, to the ears, to the mouths of Gedalim, they could understand such. Continues the Gemara, once we bring up the Milchama of Ammon and Moav, Amar Rav Chia bar Abba, Amar Rav Yechlan. We're about 10 lines down. The first one line is Amar. Another, again, we're in a segue sidebar din of the dinim of Ammon and Moav. Says Rav Chia bar Abba, Amar Rav Yechanan. Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu mekabeach schar al kol beria. Hashem does not withhold schar in any creature. Afilu schar sichana. Even the mere reward of talk, Hashem does not hold back. Why? The older daughter, when she was together with her father, Light, what did she call the child? Mayav, referring to from my father. And we see that Milchama Anagre Avid Bei Siurei. You just can't wage war against them. However, you could tax them, you could fine them, you could kenas them. But Seira, the younger daughter, that how did she talk, the daughter of love? They call her Ben Ami, which means the son of my people, which doesn't explicitly refer to the fact that this is a child being born from an inappropriate relationship of daughter with father. So to that, Amar la HaKadosh Baruch Hu lemayav leMoshe, excuse me. The Karafti says Hashem to Moshe v'Karafti mul b'nei Ammon al titzureim al tiskar bam klau. You should approach against the children of Ammon. Do not do anything to them. Al titzuram al tiskar bam. Not just fight them. Don't do anything to them. That what cloud afilu anagre lo yitevad behu. You can't even impose fines on the people, on those coming from Ammon. So we see that Hashem weighs the schar down to the finest of nuances, that even for the words of the daughter of Ammon and Moav, of Lot, calling the children either Ammon or Moav, Ammon being a jot more refined, ensured dividends of rewards for future generations. Continues the Gemara with another segue of Amar Rav Chia bar Abba, Amar Rav Yeshua ben Karcha, or approximately 20 lines down. The first word of the line is Abba la'olam yaktim adam lidvar mitzvah. One should always jump at the opportunity to do a mitzvah. Why? Where do we see this from? We see this from an unlikely source, from Lot and her daughters. For that one night, again, they thought they had good intentions. From the one night that the older daughter came before the younger one, Kadam to Araba Dayers to Yisrael, 4 generations earlier, Moav entered into Klal Yisrael. Oyved Yishai v'David u'Shleimai. V'Lutzira and the younger daughter Ad Rechavam. It took until Rechavam the Chsev Shem Yimai Nami Ha'amoy Nis. So we see from the fact that he jumped into a mitzvah, therefore their future generations entered into Klal Yisrael at a much earlier stage. And we continue, we're about 15 lines to the bottom. The first one line is Hamoy Anis, Tanu Rabbanan, bringing the sugya back to our Mishnah. Shar shel Yisrael shenagach shar shel kusi pater shel kusi shenagach shar shel Yisrael tam mishal chati nezek amud mishalem nezek shalim. So we dealt in the Mishnah with the din of the oxen goring a Kanaini, and now we move on to a kusi. Says the Gemara, if Yisrael gores a kusi, is pater. If the kusi gores Yisrael, has the regular dinim tam chati nezek amud mishalem nezek shalim. Rameir disagrees and he says, Rameir Omer Sharshal Yisrael Shanagach Sharshal Kusi is Potter. Shal Kusi Shanagach Sharshal Yisrael Bein Tam Be'emun Mishalim Nezek Shalim. You always have to pay Nezek Shalim. Says the Gemara, it sounds like Lameir Desavar Rameir Kusim are Geri Arayasim. Sounds like Rameir is of the opinion that Kusim were not appropriate to Gerim. They were Gerim due to lions, and that's the reason why it's not a good Gerus. And that's the reason why Rameir is of the opinion that they always have to pay Nezek Shalim. He asked the Gemara contradiction, about 12 lines to the bottom. Says the Mishnah, all kesem, any stain that comes from rekem or tar. Why? Because the majority of the people at Rekem are not Jewish. Rav Yehuda mitame. Why they shehem gerim? Because they are gerim v'tayim, and they don't know. They make mistakes. Mi bein hanochrim tahirim. If a stain comes from amongst the goyim, they are tahar. Mi bein Yisrael, mi bein akutim. If it comes from among the Jews and from the kutim, rameir mitame v'chachamim mitaharim. Why shaloi nechshadu Yisrael al kismeim? So what do we see from this brisa? Says the Gemara, Alma, we could see, because of Rameir Kusagiri Emesim. Clearly, Rameir is of the opinion that the Kusim are Giri Emesim. From the fact that what did Rameir say? Rameir said that they came from Mibin Yisrael, Mibin Akutim. Rameir's mitame, like a regular Yid. We see Rameir is of the opinion that the Kusim are Giri Emesim. Amar Avavua, Kenas, Ushakanas Rameir bin Mamoinam. It's true. We're 5 lines from the bottom, and we conclude with this that says Rameir, indeed, the Kusim were Geri Emesim, but it was a Kenas that they were fine that what? Shalo Yitamu Bahem, so that the Yidden were not intermingle with them. We'll stop over here and we'll pick up dealing further. Actually, no, let's just go one jot more. One more kasha is a Mishnah on top of the next Amud, one more dot. Says the Gemara, Mosir Rav Abba. Ask Rav Zera, Velun Irish Islam Kinas, Abolam Zeres on the Sina of Alakusis. Says the Mishnah. Ask the Gemara 2 lines to the bottom. So if Rameir gave a Kinas to the kusem achanami niksum. So too over here, there should be a kenas kadei sheyitamu b'hem. So why does the same kenas exist in this Mishnah? Amar Abaye explains Abaye as we turn over to Lametes Amar Aleph kadei sheychayte nischar. The reason is because we don't want one that's doing an Aveira, is talking about one who lives with someone else, but we don't want him to gain. And says the Gemara, another answer, why don't we just give it to the Aniyim? If the whole point is we don't want the one who's doing an Aveira to gain, so fine him and give it to the Aniyim. The reason is because his mama, it would be considered money that doesn't have anyone to claim it, and it would be impossible to make him pay. We'll stop over here. We'll pick it up in the Mishnah on Namatas Amalal for the next year. B'siyata Dishmaya.